We're talking Liberty Flames here today on Sharpen the Point. Last season was a disappointment with an 8-4 record, but head coach Jamie Chadwell in his third season coming from Coastal Carolina is going to look to rebound. The expectations for this roster are that they should be able to compete year in and year out for the conference championship, given the investment that the school has shown and the boosters specifically. And ultimately, they failed on that with just a down season overall. Caden Salter departs now for Colorado, and given his attitude a year ago and his play overall, it's probably addition by subtraction, as he just was not happy being stuck with the team last year for reasons that were speculation, but I believe that most of you have seen this or probably know why he was stuck there and couldn't go to Auburn. Ethan Vasco, though, is going to step in now as the starter from Coastal Carolina following Chadwell over after a hiatus, and he has not played extremely well. He's a dual threat quarterback, though, 447 yards rushing last year and 4 games over 50 yards rushing. So he's a much better athlete than passer, that as evidenced by that abysmal 55% completion percentage. But 2,100 yards, 14 touchdowns isn't terrible. And ultimately, he had his best game of the year against Old Dominion, putting up 367 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ryan Berger should be his backup. He's played a little bit in the past. We saw him some last season. But he missed all of spring with an injury. It put him behind the 8 ball, letting Vasco, who was already comfortable with the system, take advantage of that. The top 4 running backs are gone from last season. The biggest loss of all in the entirety of this offense is Quentin Cooley, who was just a ball of knives whenever he ran with the football. Billy Lucas being gone isn't going to help either. They combined for over 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns, carrying the offense, considering Salter was just so abysmal. Juju Gray is going to look to step in to that lead role now, and he's going to get plenty of touches. He's a former wide receiver, turned running back. He's explosive. I don't expect him to have the between the tackles ability of Quentin Cooley, but the explosive nature will be there. Vaughn Blue, similarly, is going to get more work than he did a year ago. I like his upside as well, being the 1B to Gray's 1A. Caden Williams is also going to factor into the rotation, none of which you can expect to be Cooley. Cooley was just a superb talent that had come down to this level and dominated. Pass catching wise, 6 of the top 7 receivers returned with only Treon Sibley gone. That might not be a great thing considering how they performed with Salter last season, but Sibley did lead the room. It was a 28 for 5, 10, and 2 line. 28 catches, 510 yards, 2 touchdowns. So the loss of CJ Daniels from 2 years ago ultimately hampered this roster completely, and I think that you should see some better play if Vasco can get the ball to his wide receivers finally. The additions of Jamari Person from Colorado State and Casey Kane from UNLV. I liked Kane a good bit at UNLV. They're going to add depth to this roster, and hopefully Elijah Canyon can step up a little bit. He had a nice season last year. I expected personally Dante Lee to be the guy, and he just never delivered. So the starters should be Canyon, Person, and Reese Smith, but they rotate a ton, with Kane, Mobley, and Dante Lee being able to step in and rotate through as a full line change like in hockey here. Someone needs to step up and take hold of the room. I don't know if anybody can. Canyon is the most likely to me, but at this point, it's anybody's game. Jacob Jenkins and Austin Henderson are going to see the most work at tight end. They're limited factors in the passing game. Bentley Hanshaw was okay, but none are going to be fantasy relevant. On the offensive line, they have a building block in Aaron Fenimore. He's the only known quantity. He's the leader on that line, but at least he plays center. So he's going to direct everybody and be able to mask some of the holes in the middle of that. I would project Jack Tucker to start at left tackle, Harrison Hayes at right guard, and DJ Geth at left guard. The transfers, Trey Bodowski from UAB and Christian Williams from Florida are going to compete for that right tackle spot. So we've got some guys transferring down. I like that when the guys transfer down, specifically when they're not They've had some production. When they haven't played at all, you end up with a Makai Polk situation where he just isn't actually good. He was just overrated when he was recruited. That happens. On the defense, the D line was just decimated in the spring portal. Lost 4 members of the 2 deep. This is what happens at the G5 level. Jay Hardy going to Auburn. He second leading tackler TJ Bush went to Cal. He had a 5.5 sack season last year. Those guys were going to anchor that line, and they are highly talented given where they ended up going to. CJ Basil is now going to look to anchor the D line at playing the joker position. They're going to hope he can get pressure off the edge. Aaron Hester has kind of stood out. He's going to take over that vacated spot from Bush, and he's a transfer from Florida State. He's got talent, and that was a good defense, a well-recruited unit. He should be able to stand out with his transfer down. Bryce Dixon is going to play defensive tackle. DJ Jackson from NC State should factor into that rotation as well. I would expect they have a little bit of trouble with the run game early, but they have enough talent along the D line that they've now accumulated that they should be able to handle themselves throughout the season. Several of the key linebackers are going to graduate or have graduated, but last year's leading tackle Joseph Carter returns. That is the key to this entire defense. He is the linchpin. He's coming off an 88 tackle season, and there's decent depth and pedigree at linebacker. They brought in some former Michigan teammates, Micah Pollard and Deuce Spurlock. Those guys have talent. Carter is clearly the focal point of this entire defense and going to be the key to being able to keep everybody in line. I find that the front 7 is the more of the weaker part, where they have to bring in these guys and try to see that they can mesh together. But the secondary is a clear strength. The top 2 corners, Dexter Ricks and Amarion Williams, return. They combined for 5 interceptions a year ago. They are quality defensive backs, especially given the conference. And then the safety is just a super deep position. They all have a good amount of playing experience, and I expect them to be able to handle these putrid passing offenses that they're going to face in Conference USA. Now let's look at the schedule and the outlook for this season. I expect Liberty to be able to win or at least compete for a conference championship every year, which is what I talked about earlier given the investment. Compared to the rest of the conference, they are making sure that football is a primary source of expense, we'll say. I think that the defense is going to be able to be good enough. I do question whether Ethan Vasco can carry them to the levels that Salter at his peak was able to take them to, and if they have the wide receivers to be able to make up the difference right there. So looking at the schedule itself, Maine is a warm-up game. It's an easy win. It's a soft early schedule. At Jacksonville State, they lose a ton from a year ago. It will be a competitive game. They're still a decent enough roster, but with what they lost, you would expect them to have to mesh together, and I think Liberty can handle that. Bowling Green, that's an easy road game. That could be one of the worst teams in the country given their coach leaving in the spring. Eddie George is now bringing in FCS guys, hoping that they can mesh together, but that's just not going to happen. I don't expect that to go well. They get James Madison at home. That game's interesting for me because I know that's a rivalry game unofficially, but those teams have no love lost. It's going to be interesting. I'm an alumnus. I'm going to side with JMU here, but at the same time, I know that Liberty has had their number. At Old Dominion, another state rival, interesting game. Vasco is going to play his best game of the year. He has torched Old Dominion 2 years in a row. Apparently, if he played Old Dominion every week, he'd be the Heisman winner. UTEP, that's a tough game. I think it's winnable, but it's a tough game. That's a big-time matchup that will be interesting to see how it plays out. New Mexico State, that's not Diego Pavia there anymore. That's a win. Chalk it up. Delaware, love them for coming up, but they're not going to be competitive with a Liberty right out the gate. Missouri State, same thing. Not going to be competitive with a Liberty right out the gate. At FIU, that's an experienced team. That's a tough game. They weren't able to convert a lot of games into wins last year, but they're a good team. They're a better team than their record showed from last year. I think they improved this year. Liberty still should get the job done as they are more talented than this FIU team. Louisiana Tech, still not a good team. I know that Kennesaw had their number last year. Kennesaw should not even be on the same field as Liberty, given the investment that's been put into that program. And there's a reason their coach got fired. I see this as an 8-win minimum team. The only real game that they should expect to be a loss would be the JMU game. But at the same time, with it being a rivalry, you could run the table, but JMU is just stronger across the lines of scrimmage, has built a little bit, they week in, week out play a little bit better of a team and have just a really, really good coach. Chadwell is amazing on offense. I just question if early in the season this team is capable of handling their business with so much turnover. So, good luck, Flames.